Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the coverage of the first debate of the 2024 primary cycle on the Republican side. I'm super excited. There is currently only one of you, but I love you very much. Let's go over the agenda for the night. We're going to go over, once again, all of the Republican candidates from before, talk about their poll numbers, a little bit about them, a little bit of a bio, and then we're going to go over one key to win. We'll try to keep it short, and then after that, we'll do a bit of a news rundown. There's some news that came out recently that I think is going to give a lot of context to what has happened, to what's going to happen tonight. And then at 8:30, my friend Seabass is going to join in from Cincinnati, and we're going to have a discussion about who's the easiest to beat if your name is Joe Biden, and who's going to be the hardest to beat if you're a Democrat. And so that's going to be a topic of discussion. And then I'm going to let him drop some knowledge about urban planning because he's very passionate about the subject. And then at 9 o'clock, because we can't actually just live stream, we'll get the MCA'd. We're going to pipe in the audio from Fox News, and we're going to play some Balloons Tower Defense. So I think that will be pretty good. And my friend Matthew Dixon may or may not be joining us, and he's going to drop some absolute knowledge about the absolute state of the Republican Party from his perspective. So let's get right into it. Okay, here we go. Little slideshow. Okay, so we got the first Republican debate hosted by yours truly. First, we got to talk about Ron DeSantis, Florida governor. RCP average has him at 14.9%. Pretty good. For him, the key to success is take out Vivek. I mean, you got to shoot, you got to kill, and you got to prove to the rest of the GOP that you are that guy. Next, we got Vivek Ramaswamy, biotech entrepreneur. RCP has him at 7%. That's pretty good. And he has to be ready to counterpunch, and he's got to have at least one or two really good moments. Next up, we have Mike Pence, former vice president. RCP has him at 4%. His key to success is going to be holding people to the conservative moral standards. So if he can really lay people's foot to the fire on those key issues that conservative evangelicals really care about, that'll be good for him. Next, we have Tim Scott, the junior senator from South Carolina. RCP has him at 3%. His key to success is probably just going to be to stay out of the fight. You don't want the smoke, and, you know, come off as a moderate, try to fill the lane that you're in. Nikki Haley, same sort of key to success, stay out of the fight. I saw her bickering a little bit with Vivek Ramaswamy online, talking about foreign policy stuff. Bad idea. I wouldn't take that too hard onto the debate stage. RCP has her at 3.3%, and she is the former governor of South Carolina. Her and Tim Scott are actually pretty good friends. And RCP has her at 3.3. Oh, no, I'm sorry. She was the UN ambassador. Next, we got Governor Chris Christie. RCP has him at 3.1%. His key to success, attack Trump and attack the people who defending him. And that's going to be the game plan. I think he's pretty good at it, so it should work out pretty well for him. Who? What are we talking about again? These people are going to be pretty irrelevant. They're sitting on opposite sides of the debate stage. I don't even know why they let them out here. Okay, let's talk about some predictions. These are the people who I think are going to be losers from tonight. I don't think they're going to get out of this too easily. Ron DeSantis, and that's because I just don't think he can take the heat from both Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy, kind of punching him from two different angles. I just think it's going to be a really tough night for him. And then Tim Scott, I think he's just really personally boring to me. And I think that all the moments that he have are going to be pretty weak in that regard. And I think a lot of that has to do because I think he's gonna be upstaged by Nikki Haley, who I think, again, they're both kind of South Carolina conservatives, South Carolina Republicans, and I think that Nikki Haley is just a better kind of version. I think they fill the same lane, but I like Nikki Haley a little bit better. Um, that's just my take on the situation. And then our big winners of tonight are going to be Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy, because I think they're going to land a lot of punches on each other. They're going to land a lot of punches on Ron DeSantis, and it'll be a really good night for them. I think it'll be an especially good night for Vivek Ramaswamy. He's doing very well in the polls despite having low name recognition, and I think being put on a national profile is really going to do wonders for his success, or do wonders for his poll numbers. And so that's what I think is going to happen tonight and tomorrow morning when we wake up to the reaction. Here's a little bit of the debate stage. This is really interesting. Again, like I said, Asa Hutchinson on this side and Doug Burnham on this other side. It should make, so they're going to be kind of completely out of the action. Then we got Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy sitting right next to each other. Okay, remember what I said, folks? I don't know if you watched my video, the preview to this election, but a memo from the Ron DeSantis campaign leaked that he's going to try to take a sledgehammer to Vivek Ramaswamy. So it's really cool. We get to see them sitting right next to each other. You know, he might actually just pull out an actual sledgehammer and hit Vivek with it. That would be absolutely insane. And then Chris Christie's over here, so that means there's just one person separating him and Ron DeSantis, and Chris Christie is going to be wanting to attack Ron DeSantis as well. So we should see some fireworks coming from this side as well. And then again, I mentioned this a little bit ago, but Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be right next to each other on the debate stage, and they've been kind of having a back and forth on social media in regards to foreign policy. So we should get at least one good moment out of that. Again, if Nikki Haley was smart, she might back off of it a little bit. But again, this is the situation. All right, follow my socials. We got Instagram and Pray for Enemy. Just a quick little plug there. All right. What are you guys thinking? What's going on here? Well, I mean, I guess I can't just like wait for the stream to catch up forever. All right. So I guess we'll start rolling into some of the news coverage. Let me get some water in me. Talk about 3 of them, and then we'll keep going. All right. So report from the AP News, Trump says he will skip the first presidential primary debate. Now, I'm just going to call it right here, folks. I think he's just going to step onto that stage at the last hour. That's just a feeling I have. And just divine inspiration, I suppose. And so if I'm right, you guys got to go crazy. So he said he wants to skip out of the debate, and he gives a pretty good reason here. Why would I allow people at 1 or 2% to 0% hitting me with questions all night? And, you know, he's right. Like, Donald Trump really doesn't have anything to gain. This is, you know, Trump's Republican Party, and these people are living in it. So I really don't think he has anything to go out there for. But the thing is, I think Donald Trump is the type of person that gets like personal satisfaction about going out there on the debate stage, being a performer. That's the type of person he is. And I don't think he can resist it. I don't think he can step away from it. And so that's why I think that Trump's going to come out onto the debate stage at the very last second. But I mean, that's not the only reason. If we pull up this article, Trump has already recorded his debate night interview with Tucker Carlson. So why would he pre-record it? Why wouldn't he do it live? You know, can they not do things live? I mean, kind of how they do things over there, right? And then Trump says he will surrender Thursday, onto the Georgia case. Okay. So, I mean, that seems like a pretty fun week to me. I mean, Monday you got off. Tuesday you interview with Tucker Carlson. Wednesday you drop people off at the parking lot at the debate. And then Thursday you, turn yourself into the Georgia case. That seems pretty fun. And so, yeah, that's what I think is going on there. Next, what the hell? I gotta scroll up. Yep, this is the right article. So right here, DeSantis debate memo urges him to hammer Ramaswamy and defend Trump. So this is really interesting stuff. This is kind of leaked prep from the DeSantis campaign. See like what he's got. He's got these kind of memorandum points. Attack President Biden in the media. That's pretty standard stuff. Hammer Vivek Ramaswamy with fake Vivek suggested as a nickname. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I don't know if the fake Vivek thing's going to work because, I mean, Ron DeSantis doesn't come off to me as a completely authentic politician. So I don't know if it's going to be like what's the phrase, pot calling the kettle black. And then, yeah, like I think that Vivek Ramaswamy, if you like him, you like him. If you don't like him, you don't like him. I think that for people who do like him, he comes off as very authentic. But for the people who don't like him, I can see it coming off as very fake and inauthentic. And so, I mean, I don't know if this attack is going to stick, but we'll see how it plays out in a little bit. Share his own positive vision. I think this is good because Ron DeSantis has been saying woke in every other sentence. And while, I don't want to get into the whole politics around this kind of terminology, I think that sharing a positive vision for the country would be a good thing. What are you going to do? What are you for? Not necessarily what you are against. I think that this is embarrassing. What are you for? What are you against? Not what you're against. That's what people want to hear, okay? They can only take so much negative stuff, right? You need to be a well-rounded candidate. And then defend former President Trump. So this is where he's going to stand in the debate. This is just what he's going to do. He's going to defend President Trump. That's the side of this kind of issue that he's going to take. So that's really interesting to me. Don't need to talk about that one. This one's really interesting. Chris Christie pulls ahead of Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire, ranking second place for GOP polls. So the way I like to look at polling is I look at the RCP average, which is the average of the last however many polls, and they take the average of them. But this person is looking at a single poll that came out that had Chris Christie ahead of Ron DeSantis. And it's really interesting. Why is he doing so well in New Hampshire? Well, I think it's because New Hampshire is one of those, what do they call it, Eastern Seaboard kind of states. And the Republicans around there are more suit and tie Republicans. And I think that they're a little bit turned off by Trump's brashness. So I think that's kind of the thing. So that's why I think he's doing better there. And yeah, we'll see if he's able to sustain this momentum, if he's able to pick up any more momentum going into or getting out of this debate. And yeah, that's what's going on. I saw something, I think it was an opinion piece written somewhere that they thought that they were making the argument that there's a path to beating Trump in New Hampshire. And while I think that's a little bit ambitious, I think that Chris Christie might actually think that, and he might actually be playing this sort of anti-Trump lane really hard. And I don't really know exactly how far that will take him. Now, let's flip over to the Democratic side of things. This one was really interesting. I thought I might bring it up. New memo shows Democrats plan to beat vulnerable Republicans. So, the Republicans are doing their thing. This is sort of the game plan, and it was sort of this leaked memo once again. Now, there's two different types of leaks, right? So, DeSantis had this leak right here, and this is one of those things where I think he genuinely didn't want this getting out to the press. Because it's his secret debate prep, or not secret debate prep, it's his debate prep, and now that all his cards are out on the table, I think that they're going to be, his attacks are going to be a little bit more difficult to land. I think he would rather have that be kept close to the chest, but again, this is leaked. So I think this is just a genuine mistake. This just got leaked. But this leak, I think, is more of a, leak, as in they, accidentally leaked it out there, oops. Right, because they wanted it out there, but they didn't necessarily want their name attached to it. And so this is basically just their strategy. And I'll read this because I think it's a good quote. Despite campaign promises to be independent, these vulnerable Republicans time and time again have voted in lockstep with the most extreme MAGA members of their party to rip away women's reproductive freedoms, cut services for veterans, defund law enforcement, gut manufacturing jobs, and uphold a culture of corruption in Washington, all while ignoring kitchen table issues like lowering costs and creating good paying jobs. Now, is this a good counterpoint? Well, I think, yeah, it's a pretty good counterpoint. And do I think it'll work? I think it'll work on the margins. I think it might work enough. I think that if they focus on economic bread and butter, kitchen table issues, that'll probably be the best for them, and I think that they definitely have some room to pick up some seats in these states that they talk about. These are very specific districts: Arizona, California, Nebraska, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. These are very traditionally Democratic places, and so they just flipped in 2020 because just the wins. I think a lot of the candidates on the Democratic side in these areas were very weak and very vulnerable, and they were kind of taken out. And I think that as long as they get politicians or candidates in these districts that are at least halfway competent or halfway likable, then they'll do pretty good in these specific districts that they're talking about in this memo. But I don't know if it'll translate to other parts of the nation. I think that's an open question. Or are they just going to stick with this, or are they going to do something else for other parts of the nation, more swing districts? We'll see. All right. So that's all I got for right now. I'm going to take a quick 2 to 3 minute break, more like a minute 30, and then we're going to get back to this fun little tier list maker I made, and that should be a good amount of fun. So I am going to walk around and drink a little bit of water, and that's what's going to happen. See you in a bit. That's embarrassing. We are back, folks. We are live. Our sound is back on. So we're gonna do the tier list creator real quick. We're going to put all of these. God. We're going to do the tier list real quick. We're going to put all these Republicans in different tiers. And then after that, Seabass is going to come on, the Bass of the Sea, one of my good friends. He's going to talk about urban planning. He's going to lay down some knowledge about that because he's very knowledgeable and he is also very passionate about the subject. And then we're also going to talk about who's the easiest Republican to beat and who's going to be the most difficult Republican to beat if your name is Joe Biden. So again, that's what we got going on. Hope you enjoy. Hope you're having as much fun as I am. Are we back? Here we go. Okay. Let's do this. Let's get it. Okay. So this is what we're doing. We're going to go in reverse order based on where they are on the debate stage. And so the first person we got is Asa Hutchinson, putting him out here in D tier. I think he is a astronomically terrible candidate. He had an appearance on Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar, and just the back and forth that he had with both of them. I mean, it just came off like he had no idea what he was talking about. Now, I'm sure he's a very pleasant person to be around, but I mean, those people, I mean, they weren't even trying to go in on him. They were just asking him some pretty basic questions, and he was having a hard time answering them. So that's how I feel about Asa Hutchinson. He's not really good in the moment. Next, we got Doug Burgum, and my boy Doug Burnham, he's from North Dakota and everything, but he looks like a cardboard copy of Ronald Reagan, or like the wax statue of Ronald Reagan. And the guy is still living in the 1980s. He looks really weird. He's got very thick eyebrows, but I think unfortunately he broke his ankle, and I think that will help him more than anything he could say on the debate stage. Let's put it out there. Let's hope him a speedy recovery, and it looks like he's gonna power through that. So, good for him. Next up, who's next in the polling? I don't remember because the polls have changed a bit. Okay, so 7, 8, or 8, 7, 6. So let's go Scott. Rick Scott, I'll put him at C tier. I actually think he's a little bit cut above your standard Republican establishment figure. Okay, I think he's just not as good as other people who fill that lane. Again, let's make sure I got the right person. like Nikki Haley, for example. But the next person we got to talk about is Chris Christie. I'm gonna put him at, you know what? I'm gonna put him at S tier. You know, I don't know if you guys remember this, but he cooked Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio got cooked. And in the 2016 presidential debate, he got cooked. Marco Rubio got cooked, and Chris Christie was the chef. So I think he's more than capable of putting up those kind of moments, right? I just think you gotta let him. If you let him go, then he'll make magic happen. And I think what went wrong in his 2016 presidential campaign is that I think everybody thought that it was an establishment moment, right? But then, and his, I'm thinking about the word. The people on his team told him to reel it back, to kind of like bring back like the wrecking ball personality. And I think that was a big detriment to him because Donald Trump came in as the biggest wrecking ball of all time and kind of rolled over Chris Christie. And so I think I've heard people call Chris Christie the proto-Trump. And if we get that like classic vintage Chris Christie at this debate stage, which I'm pretty sure we're going to get, it should be really fire and he should have a really good performance. So that's where we're at. Next, Chris Christie, Haley, number 4. And Nikki Haley. I'll put her in B tier. There's a lot of people who don't like Nikki Haley. But I think in terms of establishment Republicans, again, I keep saying this, but in terms of establishment Republicans, I think she's one of the better ones in terms of her ability to stand on stage and deliver 1 or 2 good remarks, right? So that's my thoughts on Nikki Haley. Next, we got Mike Pence. Mike Pence, I also put in C tier. I think that he is maybe one of the most boring vice presidents. You know, at least in my lifetime, he hasn't really done a whole lot, hasn't made a lot of news for himself. And that's what I think about Mike Pence. I think he's a boring candidate, and I'd put him at C tier in terms of debate performances. Next, we're getting up a little higher. Vivek Ramaswamy. I have Trump in here, even though he's not. Well, we're going to pretend like Trump's going to be here. That's what I said, right? So I'm going to stick to it. Vivek Ramaswamy, also putting in S tier because he is a very talented speaker, very talented public speaker. He just has that X factor about him that is really good. And I think that it should translate to a good debate performance. The caveat I'll throw out there is that I've heard people say that they think he gets a little bit too wordy, and that might not be to his advantage on the Republican debate stage. And while I agree, I think that it won't be as big of a factor as people think. And I think that he should have a really easy time getting at least 1 or 2 really good moments out of this debate. We'll see how it plays out. Ron DeSantis. I got to put him at A tier. I think he's a little bit less than, but I've seen him do really well, and I've seen him do really bad, okay, in terms of, like, live performances, either interviews or speeches or press conferences, actually. He's had some pretty good moments in press conferences. I don't know if it'll translate to a debate when there's 8 other people on stage, but I think that he's had some moments. Now, that being said, he's also had some really ugly moments, really cringy moments, moments that make you go like, oh, is that really the guy? But I guess it just depends on what Ron DeSantis we see. And again, this is a really big moment for the Ron DeSantis campaign. I think it's make it or break it for the Ron DeSantis campaign. I think if he doesn't do well, it's not like his campaign will be over the next day. But all of a sudden, it gets a lot harder. He's got all of a sudden, it gets a lot harder. He can't control the narrative as much. That's what I'm going with. And last but not least, Donald Trump. If Donald Trump graces the debate stage, I mean, we all know he's the Donald. He's the Donald. Not much to say. I think I'd move everybody like down a tier, right? We can't, right? But he's like right here. He's a cut above these 3 just because he's cultivated his sort of character over a very long time, right? Like, I mean, even like to the Apprentice days, he has crafted his public image masterfully over time, despite being a terrible person. So that's what we got going on. We'll take a quick break as I try to get Seabass on the line. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello. Hello? Hello. Alright. I am walking to my apartment right now. Hold on.
Okay, so
Yeah.
hello everybody. This is the Bass of the Sea. So
Hello.
go ahead, give yourself an introduction. Like, what do we need to know about you?
Yeah, so I am a political science major at Xavier University. Uh, known Joseph since from college because he was in the honors program for PPP, as it's known, philosophy, politics, and the public. Whereas I just did straight poli sci, and then we were also on the campus news together. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I guess I'm a Cincinnati correspondent at this point.
All right, sounds good. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the mic. Or not the mic, the camera, but I think we should be
Gotcha.
we should be
Yeah,
good.
whatever works.
Yep. All right, so we'll get into it. So I guess I'll just like throw the question onto you. Who do you think is like what do you think about the Republican field as it relates to a campaign from a Democrat such as or the from Joe Biden, right?
So I don't think that there are any, because obviously the two biggest contenders against Biden would be Trump and DeSantis. However, the two top dogs, being them two, are have incredible obstacles right now going against them. Trump with being, arrested and stuff like this in Georgia,
Yeah,
I
Georgia and
think,
a
and
few
then
places federally.
yeah, and then DeSantis with just the campaign thus far for DeSantis has been kind of abysmal. Like he was supposed to be like the front runner, like the guy, you know? But then literally it's just like his campaign seemed to be shooting itself in the foot left, right at every turn. Um like especially the I know the biggest thing like that happened that like got just what like all the internet politics people kind of riled up was the DeSantis like like anti-gay video campaign ad
Yeah, that ad was very I,
because it was trying to appeal to like Zoomer, Gen Z, more conservative types, right? Because it had the sort of the branding, the imagery. However, that doesn't really play for older, even like older that people like would be receptive to that message. That the way that it was like gone about sort of alienated those people and also alienated the everybody except for a very specific type of like online sort of Twitter conservative, you know?
yeah.
Whereas that's what like even like Vivek Ramaswamy and then a lot of the other candidates have sort of like seen DeSantis's bungling of the campaign or his like team's bungling as like okay, we can like gain ground here, you know?
Yeah, I think that
'Cause
I I think that it's so the ad was very alienating, and I think it's like a big messaging mistake on his part. Do you see him being able to turn it around and to sort of focus on more um, kind of issues that people are thinking about more?
I mean, when it comes to because obviously that's a very like the that ad was centered around a very like culture war-y type of issue, right? Not like legitimate like issues that affect the day to day for people. If you try to like I feel like now if you try to signal that way, it would seem a lot less, you could say, genuine. It would seem more pandering. However, it would still get him more if he could like make a complete turnaround to that, I think that would be his best bet. But I feel like that's sort of where the like even the Nikki Haley's, the Vivek Ramaswamy's, etc. of the Republican base are like doing way better and is actually signaling about like the real issues. Rather, like DeSantis try to get like a lot of more sort of online type issues at the forefront. And that's why I personally have called like Ramaswamy the sort of Andrew Yang of the Republican of the GOP.
That's a really good comparison. I have never thought of that.
It's a lot of like he's not trying to be like the typical, he's like, oh, I'm not, the old wing of the Republicans. I'm trying to have like a new, fresh face. It's also like I've got new fresh ideas. I'm not trying to do any of this like alienating people sort of thing. He's trying to be a very just like fresh forward guy. Like Andrew Yang, he did that whole like not left, not right, center thing, even though he ran as like a Democrat and stuff.
Yeah,
It seemed a lot of same signaling, but from just a different angle.
that's very interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I hear
Like
Vivek Ramaswamy talking a lot about um, bringing people together, like kind of like playing that Andrew Yang angle, like, oh, this isn't about Republican versus Democrat, this is about the future of the country type of thing. But then you go issue for issue on his level, and it's like a paleocon, neocon, like Santa wish list, like Christmas wish list.
yeah, yeah.
And so
Like
I think there's a big disconnect between the way he talks and kind of his policies.
I mean most definitely, yeah. So Vivek's like his best thing like about his campaign that he's done is his branding. His branding is top notch. Like as you said, like all of his if you actually look at his policies and stuff, it's all paleocon stuff. But that was the same thing with Andrew Yang. He was like trying to be like a uniter sort of thing. But if you looked at all of his policies, it's just a copy paste of Bernie Sanders, but just like minus a few, but without saying socialism.
Yeah.
You know, like it was same thing with like Andrew Yang. He had a very like strong branding, but he couldn't. I feel like Ramaswamy actually did a way better job at spinning what he's going for, like branding wise and marketing wise, than Yang. Even though Yang like you'd say pound for pound, Yang and Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy is like doing technically worse percentage wise than Yang did in the primaries. But I feel like Yang was much more like people's second choice. He didn't. He had like a very small rabid base, but it wasn't like he couldn't actually do that uniting. Whereas I feel like Ramaswamy, he doesn't have as much of a rabid base that he did, but he's actually better at getting those larger swaths of people in due
I
to his like all his signaling and messaging that he's done thus far. Even though a lot of his stuff is, like you said, paleocon type stuff.
I agree. Um, and I think the interesting thing about this Republican primary is that all of the oxygen has been taken out of the room by Donald Trump. But again, it's an open question on how long Trump is going to be sticking around. So I think that like if Vivek can position himself in second place, then I think that he can be a really clear alternative. And I think like the Republican Party is in a really weird place because they only have one establishment figure or one anti-establishment figure, and that's Donald Trump. And they have been looking for a second one to sort of be that Trump guy who's anti-establishment, but not, doesn't have the liabilities that Trump has in terms of like his legal troubles and just the fact that a lot of people just really can't stomach him at this point.
Yeah, I mean that was they were trying to push DeSantis as that second anti-establishment,
Yeah.
sort of figure. However, at this point, I feel like it's been uh almost 8 years since 2016, since Trump got elected, since he was like first became the president. And so I feel like at this point, sort of Trump's messaging is less. It's obviously it's a very firebrandy, very populist that thing, but it's also at this point, 8 years is a long time. It has sort of become the establishment of the GOP in a sense, where they sort of nobody expected the GOP to fall rank and center with Trump like that. It only started to sort of like backlash against him after the 2020 election. They were pretty much rank and fail with him all 4 years that he was president. And even like like say like Marjorie Taylor Greene still like she was a very populisty anti-establishment person around with it, but she was way less, you could say, uh soft with the messaging. She tried to like go too far with it, and DeSantis also sort of with the the ad that we talked about earlier fell into the MGT sort of camp a little bit. So that sort of like alienation type went too far onto the anti-establishmentarianism.
Yeah, I
Whereas
think.
like,
Go ahead.
or what were you gonna say? Go ahead.
I think that like Donald Trump's special talent as a politician is that he can somehow do this magical thing where there's a certain group of people that will just put their ideas onto Donald Trump. It's like Freud or not Freud. It's like that paper that you just see what you want to see type of thing.
Oh,
Like
the
that's how
Rorschach test.
yeah, the Rorschach test. I think that Donald Trump is that and like it takes a very special politician to be able to pull that type of thing off. Like not everybody can necessarily do that
Yeah, I mean
for
like,
Republicans.
because even like yeah, all right. So Trump, like, as far as like how I saw him went, like obviously it was like actually a lot of his while I wasn't as much of a fan of his domestic policy, I think all of his foreign policy criticisms were very valid. However, it was just like the messaging that he did around because he was very like trying to rile up, his base at every turn sort of thing. In doing so, uh did a lot of like it scared a lot of people foreign policy wise, right? Because he was like, "Oh, I don't think we should be paying for other countries' defense budget," which is like a very valid. I agree, very valid criticism and stuff. But then he's like, "We're going to leave NATO," and I'm like, maybe that's not the way to go about it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a very like drawing away, riling up the base sort of thing. Whereas he, I think, is the best probably populist out of the. He's the most successful populist, at least in recent memory, in the US. Whereas like DeSantis is trying to do that sort of thing, but he's just not doing it as well. He doesn't have the sort of like sauce that Trump has. Because even like people that hated Trump are like, oh yeah, I Trump is a great speaker in the sense of like he even though he doesn't like, he's not like a great speech guy, but he's the way he says things is very earnest, you could say.
Yeah. He
You
has
know, it
Riz.
it he has frizz basically. He rizzes people up regardless on the political spectrum. They're like even like people that are like LGBTQ or whatever. They're like, yeah, Trump is like sassy. I fuck with him because he's sassy.
Oh, that's fun. I don't think I've heard that, but
No, I've like seen that on a couple different things. They're just like, yeah, the way he's like, oh, Ron DeSanctimonious, and they're like, who could have came up with that?
yeah.
They're like, only him.
Yeah. He does have a special knack for like painting people into the corner. Um, so we got 10 minutes before the debate starts. You want to keep talking about this kind of state of the Republican Party, or
Sure,
do
yeah.
you want to
I
do you want to cook about urban
yeah.
planning? Because I'll give you the stage.
All right, yeah. I mean, so yeah, urban planning is my bread and butter. It's my bag. I so I'm a big, as we've talked before, I'm a big walkable communities guy, right? Big bike guy. Even though like I've driven new places, I drive a car. I'm not trying to like advocate. So, all right, blanket. It's how should I say this? Like, so I think that the Republican sort of the online Republican base, that sort of like internet literate, but also like Facebook people sort of thing. They both sort of fall into like that old oh, we like old architecture. We like old they like froth at the mouth at all those like classical, oh, look at what we built sort of things, you know? And that's sort of even urban planning wise, that's very attainable in the modern. You could still build like that, all those older buildings that people like are like, oh, this is such a good thing. We hate, 5/1 modernist architecture, the international style, if you would. You can still build today like Art Deco or any type of style architecture. The only reason that like stuff is built the way it is today is because it's just cheap. If you could just like put pressure on like developers, especially, and especially for example in Cincinnati, 3CDC, the partially city-owned developing commission, they build a lot of like very, the classic 21st century, oh, this looks like a shit modernist building or whatever. However, if you put pressure on them, they can build to look sort of what the neighborhood looks like. Like for example, OTR is what their big project, If you put pressure on them, they will build the style of that architecture. And with that comes, the walkability, the community building that people sort of crave that they've like lost due to, suburbanization. And for lack of a better word, like the car culture, having to drive 20 to 30 minutes to do things. Whereas I feel like that's a lot of the sort of what people are like, oh, we love the 50s and the 60s for, we wish we could go back to that era. What people miss most of the time is just like the community feel of areas. And that's sort of felt in a lot of these older neighborhoods that have now been hollowed out due to like various, socioeconomic factors. That's what also a lot of like younger people are returning to. That is like we just need to preserve them and also build more, densely to accommodate for people. And obviously, like there's the whole thing was like people move to the suburbs because they like a yard, they like privacy. But you could also still have that, but it's not as, obviously you're not gonna have like as big a yard, as big a place, but you could still have that in, a more dense area. It's all about the community building around that. And they're not trying to like get rid of like the 15-minute city. They're not trying to get rid of your car, not trying to police where you go. It's just making it more robustly available, the options to be like, oh, okay, I can go to this amenity that's within 15 minutes. What would you say in that regard?
Yeah, I think that like it's about building places um to, I guess, boost what is so good about them in the first place. Like if you apply the values of like rural America to urban planning, and or vice versa, if you apply like the values of like urban communities to rural communities, like I think that's a mismatch. But I think we should be building our like urban places to be very vibrant and lively, and you can walk places and things like that, and then sort of allow people in rural places to uh, be where they are, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why that's one of the reasons that I mean, obviously you grew up in like, the Detroit metro. And then I remember we were talking once, we went to a neighborhood near campus, and you're like, oh, are these places just sort of like it was, uh around the I forgot what it was called, but you just made a comment that was like, oh, are these like sort of pockets? It was a very beautiful looking urban area. And you're like, are these pockets like a lot where you grew up in Chicago? And like Chicago has a lot of like those sort of urban pockets of like this is a community center sort of thing. And I think Cincinnati did that very well. It still has a lot of like it feels like a patchwork of smaller communities and with one, big obviously downtown and stuff. And I think that's the thing. It's like rural America, very small community, everybody knows each other sort of feel. And then even in like cities, it's like the neighborhood comes together. But like the suburbs, you could say, or at least I like growing up in the suburbs, I felt very disconnected from my neighbors. I felt very like I didn't really know many other people because it's like, oh, to go to my friend's house, I had to drive 20 minutes or whatever. It didn't feel very cohesive. It was like, yeah, we're all living in the same town, but it felt very sparse. It felt very alienated. Whereas even where I live now, it's like, okay, I don't know everybody in my building, but I know some people. I know people like around across the street. I know the guy that runs the corner store. I know one of the bartenders at the local dive bar, that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah, places like that. Um, okay, that sounds good. Are you down to play some Balloons Tower Defense at 9?
I mean, obviously,
Okay,
obviously.
okay. So we are going to take a break until we get to the debate time, and then we're going to be piping in the audio and playing Balloons Tower Defense and making quippy comments about who is messing up and who is not. So that's
There you go.
the
Yeah.
plan. All right. We'll see you guys at 9, right at 9.
All of them, other than that game, so they just let you go to the